Today on Midwestern Garage, we're going to be changing the oil pan.
Yeah!
Alright, we're going to see if we can snake this guy out without lifting the motor up, but I'm almost 100% confident. I'll have to take the motor mounts loose and push up. Probably put something on the crank snout and push up from the bottom. I've got, probably take this jack, shove up on that crank snout to get the clearance I'll need to get it out, but I will set the camera up and start taking these bolts out. You need Ellie to crank it? Alright, well, let's see if we can get this to pop down at all.
It makes like no show.
It's for a little bit, but not nearly enough, so I'll have to push the motor up to get the pan out. So that's just taking this bolt and that bolt loose, and then I should be able to push up the motor on the crank and then get it out. Alright, so I got this little spin jack here. Gonna start spinning the motor up. I wanted you to see how it'll, hopefully I can do this one-handed. See if I can change the light a little bit. See how there's getting space under that bolt. Sorry I'm bouncing around so much. And there we go. As I'm spinning this, the gap it's getting bigger and bigger. Make sure we're not hitting anything. Still got daylight. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you're doing this is to make sure you're not getting light on the front, because as you're pushing the motor up, if you've got a long, heavy car like this, it might want to start tipping the other way. I don't think that's the case, but just to be safe, I'm gonna grab that gray jack. I'm gonna put it back there just to make sure I don't tip this off the freaking lift. So I'll be right back. All right, now I have reduced my risk of death by 3%. I feel a little better about it, and I can spin this up a little more. Eventually, this one has a pin in it, so it can only go up so high. Obviously, so you don't just keep cranking this out of the tube. It needs a little bit of meat in there so it doesn't tip around. Sorry, it's kind of hard to do with one hand. Now, the main question is, have I hosed myself putting this bar in the way, or am I going to be able to get around? I'm sure. But my thought is I can get this up high enough, stick a 2x4, which don't ever put your hand in there, but stick something between the motor mount and the frame over there, and then I can get this out of the way once I've got it up high enough. So let me crank on it a little more with two hands, and I'll stick something in between there, and I'll show you guys what I got once I got it set up. See if I can get you in here. Got an imprint of the pickup tube on the pan, so that's not good. So when it looks like somebody jacked up the motor onto that pan, but you can actually see the imprint of the pickup tube on let's see if I can get a better shot. See the circle right there? That means the pan was shoved into the pickup tube, which it's not necessarily bad for this. I worry that it was starving for oil because it wouldn't be able to get enough oil fast enough into the oil pump, so it wouldn't starve it. Now that doesn't necessarily mean anything's bad, but it does mean I'm gonna look a little harder. Now so far everything looks great. I mean, these ledges, see this block has what's called a deep skirt, like your typical like 302 or small block Chevy or whatever. The oil pan sits up here, and then the main bearings and the crank kind of hang into where the pan sits, and you can really kind of see what I'm talking about at the front, because most oil pans come around the front and then they go down and around the crankshaft and over, but this is such a deep skirt. Let's see if I can get a better shot. See, the oil pan's completely flat all the way around because this design has deep skirt, so everything's up above. So it makes it a little easier doing jobs like this because most oil pans will leak in that corner where it meets up there. So just something a little different with these Ford FE motors. So that's good to see. C3AEA. So C is 1960, 3 would be 1963. Automotive engineering A, which means it's an auto or a car block. So everything points to original motor. C3, yep. So, sorry, C2AE, which 62 main caps is perfectly fine. Alright, so bottom of the cylinders still have cross hatching. See a couple vertical scores, but nothing horrible. So at least for now, everything looks fine. You can see the camshaft up there with a little drip on it. That looks okay. It's camshaft again. So nothing down here looks real bad. So I'm probably gonna put something on the crank and rock it back and forth and listen for any kind of clanking, like if a rod bearing spun. Probably wouldn't hear a main bearing from down here, but at least if I put a wrench on that snout and kind of jerk the crank back and forth, if there's a rod bearing that's really worn out, I'd be able to hear it. So I'll probably do that real quick, and if that sounds fine, let's scrape this gasket off, put the new oil pan on. Alright, so we've got that all scraped off, and then I've also brake cleaned, scraped the gasket, and then I used a green Brillo pad and scuffed it. Got it pretty clean. And then I brake cleaned it. And then I don't like leaving all this dry and like brake cleaned, so I PB blasted everything to kind of lube it up a little bit, and then I just put some brake clean on a rag and clean the surface area. And so I'm gonna get ready to throw this oil pan on.
Oil pan change.
Alright, so got the oil pan in the other night. It's a few days later. Gotten that all buttoned up, and new oil filter. Today I'm going to put the new fuel pump in and run new fuel line all the way back to the tank. Like I said in the last video, I got the fuel sender for the 427 cars, so it's 3/8, because I'm gonna either put power adders or make it a nice strong all motor. Haven't decided yet, but at least I've got the bigger hose to run a moderate amount of power. So I'm going to probably lower it down. Maybe I'll take the radiator hoses off while I'm down here, see if there's anything in there, get the radiator out, and because I got a new aluminum radiator coming. Hopefully should be here today, and then we'll just keep trucking. Alright, back on the ground. Today, like I said, I want to get the radiator pulled out. I'll probably take the overflow out, pull what's left of this battery tray out. I want to get these fender liners out. I do have a 1-wire 100 amp alternator that I'm going to put on. Things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and get tearing this all apart. What are you doing?
Taking this out.
Taking that hose off?
Yeah.
Okay. That's probably good enough. Yep, nope. Yep. Try and make sure the screwdriver stays straight. Yep. Alright, that's probably good. Alright, let's see there. Alright, just a little checkup. The time lapse I don't think caught, but this is where we're at so far. Just unbolted that degas bottle, pulled the old distributor out, slid the new one in, verified it kind of fit, and 2 bolts on that new fuel pump. So far everything's good with that. The line threaded in. Surprisingly, it is a 3/8 fuel line going into that pump, which seems kind of odd because that's for the 352, but hey, I'm not going to complain. It's better that way anyway. So as of right now, I will probably take this generator off and then start to see how the alternator is going to fit, how much modification that's going to need. But basically put plugs and wires on. This is coming. These HEIs just need 1 wire to run. So that's got power from the ignition. So should have spark no problem. Fuel line up to the carb. I just got to run that fuel line along the frame rail. Make a little rubber hose connection there with a, I guess I don't need a filter because there's a filter on that bottom housing of that pump. So, and it is a new tank, a new line, so it's not like I need a clear filter to see what's going through because it all should be all brand new. So just have that hard copper line coming from here, have the little rubber hose make up the difference. Same thing at the tank, have a little rubber hose go from the fuel sender to the rail, and then throw some gas in the tank. So let me get the car back up in the air. I'm gonna start putting the fuel line in. Got the fuel tank and fuel line all complete. Got the little vent hose on the tank ran. Keep in mind that is important because that hard line comes over here and it actually pokes out in the little door space, so it's not actually venting into your trunk, or it's not, you know, letting fumes go up in the cab. It actually keeps it in a little pocket up there. Keeps the vent, keeps the fumes out of the cab. There's the 3/8 line running up into the copper brake line / fuel line stuff. It's not pretty, but with the amount of time I've got to get this done, important thing is it's not touching anything. It's not rubbing anything. There's no interference. Spraying up all the way, changes the rubber, goes into the new fuel pump. So it is all new from tip to tail, other than the carb, obviously. The carburetor is still the original untested 2-barrel. But the guy I got it from said he had it fired up off a gas can last summer. So hopefully the 2-barrel is not completely foobarred, but we will see pretty shortly. I'm going to let it down. I'm going to throw some spark plugs in it, put the plug wires on it, and see if this thing will fire off. Alright, got the fuel in the fuel tank, got the battery hooked up, I got oil in it, I got new plugs in it, distributors in. I'm going to crank it up and see if it'll fire. It probably will crank for a while because it has to draw fuel all the way from the tank all the way up to the carburetor. On the wrong side of the cylinder. Alright, key's dead. I need to inspect a little and see what's going on with that. Alright, just jumper wired the distributor for now. And I'm just cranking it off the coil. And with the power probe, I think when Ryan was putting that master cylinder in under the dash, he might unhook some wiring to get it out of his way. Fuel's coming out everywhere out of the carburetor, so we've got fuel. See if we can get that seat in the carb to close up. let that charger sit on this for a little bit, see if we can crank a little faster. Alright, well, unfortunately, I think this starter has kind of left the chat, so it's just cranking so slow. Even though I've got a good battery with a charger on it, it just keeps cranking slower and slower and slower no matter what. And this carburetor is pouring fuel out of the power valve and where the fuel line goes in, and it was coming out of the vents. So I at least need a carb kit and a starter, and unfortunately no one's gonna have either of those in town, so I'm gonna have to wait no matter what. But hopefully next video this will be fired up, running, get the brakes in, bled, and maybe test drive it. So thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.